Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse from Lunar Astrology, and in this recording I'm going to be looking at the astrology of May 2023. So this is another really big month in the cosmos. As we come into the month, we've got Mercury still in retrograde motion. During the month, we're going to have Jupiter changing signs. We have the next installment of eclipse season, and we also have some major aspect patterns coming into play as well. So it is very dynamic looking at this picture. The month begins with Pluto stationing retrograde. This is on the 1st of May. So every year Pluto stations retrograde for around 5 months. And what happens during a retrograde period is that we internalize the action of that planet. We have to go within. Pluto is asking us to go within. In forward motion, Pluto in Aquarius has been pushing us to change our ideology so that we can reclaim some power to free ourselves, to liberate ourselves. Pluto is making changes here in our charts, in our natal charts, the house where he is moving. He's making some changes in this area to give us greater freedom. Whilst it was in Capricorn, Pluto was making changes to the structure of our lives so that we can have greater stability. So during this retrograde period, Pluto is going to ask us to do some inner work, to really dig deep within ourselves so that we can change our minds, so that we can change our idea of what the future is going to look like, so that we can reclaim our freedom, so that we can feel more in control, because sometimes it can feel like things are spinning out of control wherever Pluto moves in the chart. So it's a very important period. And sometimes it can feel a bit like wherever Pluto is moving in the chart, things are a bit more intense in that house, in that area of life. Things intensify. Pluto puts on a little bit more pressure because he says there are things that need to be addressed here. You must look at this. What is the truth here? So if we feel a bit of pressure, then it is about sitting with that to experience, what is this actually saying to me? What is Pluto saying to me? This is important because if I listen, he's really going to show me where the riches are in this area of my life or in this experience that I'm having. Now, Pluto is going to be retrograde in Aquarius until the 11th of June, and then he will move back into Capricorn to continue that work right up until the 11th of October. So we're going to have a subtle shift during that retrograde period, firstly working on the ideas of freedom and our patterns of thinking, our ways of thinking, and then secondly working on the internal structures and conditioning. You're going to be looking at where have I been conditioned in a way that has disempowered me, and that's what Pluto will help to dismantle. On the 2nd of May, the Sun will form a conjunction to Mercury. So this is actually the midpoint of the Mercury retrograde period. And what tends to happen is that the mind is illuminated. We get some kind of revelation as Mercury sits on the throne of the Sun. We become aware of the issue, the problem, the thing that we've been dealing with whilst Mercury has been retrograde. It's a retrograde in Taurus. There's a lot of focus on Taurus at the moment. So Taurus is a sign that's connected with our resources and our money and our security. And Mercury is doing a lot of work here to go over things. Do we need to make a better plan, make a better financial plan? Do we need to really consider the resources we have and use them in better ways? Are we feeling a bit insecure emotionally? So we've got to change our thinking around this. And so we've been doing this work, and then the Sun comes along and conjoins Mercury. Mercury sits on the throne. He is elevated. Kazimi is the technical word. And suddenly we see it all. Suddenly we get it. We have an understanding, or maybe we even have an idea. Sometimes we can have an important conversation around this time that sparks illumination. So now we're starting to get the issue that we're dealing with for Mercury retrograde. And on the same day, Mars is going to return from being out of bounds. So it feels like it's been going on forever, because this was last October when Mars went out of bounds. And it was all the way through that long retrograde period, Mars in Gemini. It was out of bounds there. So things kind of happening in very strange ways, and maybe feeling as though whenever we took action on something, it was sort of rebounding on us in a way that was unexpected, or our energies were getting deflected into something else. It feels as though there's been almost like a chaotic edge to this Mars being out of bounds. So with Mars coming back in bounds, that should help to calm things a little, and it also should help us to be able to direct our energies and channel our energies much more effectively. Yes, Mars is still in Cancer, so there's a lot of emotional content around that, but at the same time, at least we can perhaps now find it easy to align our feelings to our actions, so we're more in touch with what is happening and where our energies are going. On the 5th of May, we have the second and final eclipse of the season, with a lunar eclipse in Scorpio. And I will be doing a full Astro Tarot reading for this lunation over on my Patreon. But for a quick look now, it's important to remember that a lunar eclipse often marks an important ending or important culmination that relates to the area of life indicated by the house where it's taking place in your chart. Generally speaking, this is an amped up full moon in Scorpio. So we're looking at themes that relate to shared resources, intimacy and bonding, fears, mysteries, secrets. And maybe with the moon opposing the recent Sun-Mercury conjunction, along with Uranus, there's a sense that suddenly the truth has materialized. And now this leads to an understanding of what we need to release. So the releasing comes from the fact that this is a South Node eclipse, so that we can get unstuck. Things should feel a lot less complicated in this area of life after this eclipse, because the Taurus energy of the North Node in Taurus is asking us to simplify. It's almost like the chart is saying, you know what? It's simple. This is what you need to let go of. Or this is the fear that you need to face so that you can reclaim your power here, or you can regain control here. This is the last of the eclipses in Scorpio for this cycle as well. So I think this is why it feels extra important to acknowledge the truth where you find it. On the 7th of May, Venus will enter Cancer. And this is a wholesome place for the goddess of love and harmony. When Venus moves signs, we change the way we express our love, and we have more appreciation for the things that the sign rules. Cancer is an emotional, family-orientated sign, so Venus is very affectionate here. This is motherly love, the kind of love that says, I care for you and I will take care of you. Venus in Cancer feeds you your favourite foods and looks after you when you're sick, and it makes sure it gives you a hug before you leave for work. But it can also be super sensitive, as Cancer is also very in touch with its past history. So we can regress into childish behaviour sometimes. We can sulk or hide away or withdraw into our shell if we feel unloved or unappreciated. Positively, this is a good time to nest, to beautify your home, to make sure that your domestic environment feels good for you and for those that you live with. It's an ideal time to smooth over any family troubles or to make peace with the past. And sometimes we might just want to stay home more because this is where we can indulge ourselves with the things that we love. And maybe we're also feeling a bit more sentimental during this transit as well. If you're feeling unloved or unappreciated, then activate your inner mother to take care of yourself in the way that you would like to be taken care of, so it heals your heart and any hurt. On the 12th of May, I just wanted to point out that Jupiter will move on to the final degree of Aries. This is the anaretic or critical degree, which can be very volatile. This is an extreme feeling of urgency, a huge sense of energy, a dynamic pull to get ahead, to make it on our own, to take a leap of faith. And in some ways, this can be a good thing as it gives us enormous energy to play with, but it can also be a bit unwieldy. So it is important that we look before we take that leap of faith. And it is also very significant that this is the degree of the solar eclipse that we've just had on the 20th of April. So whatever was seeded around that time becomes hugely visible now. Essentially, Jupiter is activating the eclipse degree, which can set karmic events in motion. And Jupiter will be on this degree now until May the 16th, which is when Jupiter enters Taurus. Just before Jupiter leaves Aries, though, we have Mercury stationing direct. This is on the 15th of May. So now we can start to move ahead with plans relating to our survival and our security and our money. We will, however, have the shadow period after the retrograde. So it is best to move forwards slowly rather than to try to rush ahead. On this date, May the 15th, Mars is also going to be trine to Neptune as well. So that brings in almost like a touch of the miraculous. There is a natural flow happening if we act on our intuition. All kinds of magical things can occur under this aspect, but we need to listen to our intuition for direction. If we are out of tune with ourselves, we're not feeling connected to what our intuition is saying to us, if we're consumed by past anger or old stories, bearing in mind Mars is in the sign of Cancer, then it may be harder to tell what our intuition is saying to us. So don't get distracted and definitely don't get caught up in victim thinking. Hopefully Mercury's presence in Taurus should help with that anyway, because it does encourage a very practical mindset. On May the 16th, as I just mentioned, Jupiter is going to move off that critical Aries degree and move into Taurus. This is a major energetic shift, and Jupiter will be in Taurus now for an entire year until it moves into Gemini on the 26th of May next year. Now, I will be making a video focusing on this transit alone, but just let's have a quick look here at this ingress, as it's important, of course. So generally, where Jupiter moves, it promotes the idea of increase, blessings and abundance. It has the action of magnification, and it also provides opportunities for growth. So in Taurus, collectively, this is about growth that is connected to our survival, our resources, our money and our security. So yes, this could mean that some investment portfolios grow, but there is a bit of a boom and bust pattern with Jupiter going through Taurus. I will explain more in the Jupiter in Taurus video, but just be conscious of that. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Generally, as Taurus is a practical earth sign, the idea is about sustained growth. Jupiter in Aries was all about getting things started, initiating, inspired, lots and lots of goals. But Taurus is about making it work in reality. It's the consistency needed for development day after day after day. So maybe now we're picking one or two important projects to focus on instead of having far too many to handle, because the idea is that we need to finish what we start. So slow growth is the key here. We need to be very patient with developments. Patience is definitely a blessing during this time. In your own chart, Jupiter's house position will show you where you need to increase your sense of security, both emotionally and materially, so that you can take advantage of the growth that Jupiter offers you. Whilst Jupiter in Taurus can be very good for money, there can also be a shadow expression which relates to greed and the need for hoarding, having, keeping. It kind of reminds me of Gollum from Lord of the Rings fawning over my precious. If we are deeply insecure, we can seek out outer security to make up for that inner emptiness. Having money, buying stuff, being a consumer. This can get out of hand with Jupiter in Taurus. You don't need more. Choose quality over quantity. And this message will be rammed home because the moment Jupiter enters Taurus, it's going to form a square to Pluto in Aquarius. This is a one-time deal, a one-hit wonder, as I usually call them. But Jupiter and Pluto will remain in orb of that square up until June. So it's almost as if the minute we see that our lives can be much more fruitful, so Jupiter going into Taurus, it's like Pluto sticks up his head and says, but you can't have everything. And this is what I was saying about the kind of the boom and the bust. If we go overboard, then Pluto is going to rein us in and remove what we don't need. And Jupiter square Pluto is exact on the 18th of May, and it might bring with it a real enormous desire to control everything. Specifically, we're focused on our survival for the future. Now, it's really great for increasing our will and facing our fears, but it can also speak of extremism, particularly of a religious or philosophical kind. There's much more to say about this transit, but like I said, I will put that in a separate video, and I'll also be doing Jupiter in Taurus through the houses for the signs so that you get a good overview of how this transit will work for you. In the midst of all of this, with Jupiter entering Taurus and squaring Pluto, we have a new moon in Taurus. This is on May the 19th. And again, I will be doing an Astro Tarot reading for this chart over on my Patreon. But for now, the new moon in Taurus says, this is a time to plant seeds of intention that relate to our security and our survival and our money. Yes, it's a repeating theme. I mean, it's massive right now. We've just had Mercury retrograde here, the nodes here. We've got Sedna hanging out on the anaretic degree of Taurus, which really intensifies this feeling that this is a critical point in our evolution, especially when it comes to our Earth's natural resources. And then Jupiter moving into Taurus, saying we've really got to see the big picture so that we can have abundance for all. Over and over and over again, the planets point to Taurus to encourage us to focus on what is practical and tangible. And for added emphasis, this new moon in Taurus will form trines to both Pluto and Ceres, which creates a really wide grand trine pattern in the chart. It's not a perfect grand trine because Pluto is now in Aquarius, but still, it's almost as if the skies are saying it's time now, the time is ripe now to make a practical, fresh start. Ceres is about the seasons, and Pluto reminds us that change is the only constant. So there's a sense that this is a time to grab this opportunity whilst you can, but also to be mindful, to listen to your intuition that will tell you which project or which endeavour will be the most fruitful for you to begin. On the 20th of May, Mars then enters Leo. Now, generally speaking, where Mars moves, we have increased motivation and desire. The way we go after our goals changes, and our goals themselves may be more aligned to the energetic signature of the sign involved. In showy, theatrical, royal Leo then, Mars wants to be seen and heard. Make a noise, stamp your feet, cue the trumpets and the parade. The desire for recognition is strong here. It also urges us to take a few more risks in life. This is the nature of Leo. Given that Mars was in Gemini for 7 months and what felt like 10 million years, then it was in Cancer, which is the sign of its fall, we can anticipate that Mars moving into Leo is going to feel a bit like releasing a caged lion. And that's great if we want to get things moving again, but, and it's a big but, Mars is going to run right into that Jupiter-Pluto square. So it's going to oppose Pluto on the 21st of May, and then it will square Jupiter on May the 23rd. So this picture also involves the nodes as well. So Pluto is now squaring the nodes and Jupiter is conjunct the north node. So it all feels very karmic and very big. Essentially, what we have here is a T-square pattern, which is going to be in play until June the 3rd. But the next few days are very tense. Now, in the mundane world, this combination of energy could speak of things like massive military offences, explosive situations, extremist actions, huge anger, rage, a feeling that things are spinning out of control. Now, I'm really focusing there on some of the more dynamic and more extreme ways that this could manifest. And it is unpleasant to consider those kinds of worst case scenarios, but I do think it's important that we just bear them in mind. The best case scenario, though, using these same aspects, is that it could help us to take action where necessary. It can help us to take a well-calculated risk, to act fast, to secure an opportunity, to be confident in your judgment and really clear of your motivation. So the most important thing is to guard against overreaction. That's particularly with Mars square to Jupiter, because Jupiter magnifies what it touches. So guard against overreaction, watch your triggers, don't get swept up into negativity and anger, don't get caught up in the drama. With Mars then squaring the nodes on May the 26th, what we do now is connected to our unfolding karma. A square to the nodes suggests a missed step. And right now we've got both Mars and Pluto in an opposition to one another, squaring the nodes. Essentially, how we resolve our conflicts and how we react to things that are out of our control, these are fundamental to understand and handle better as we move forwards. We've got to get a grip on our underlying motivations and understand how our shadows can generate and sometimes perpetuate conflict. Now, whilst Mars, Jupiter and Pluto are all singing and all dancing, we're also going to have the Sun moving into Gemini. So that's on May the 21st. And this signals that it is a time for us to approach each other with a neighbourly mindset. We are all brothers and sisters on planet Earth. We are all connected. Usually, this transit illuminates a need for communication and connection. And clearly, given that really tense picture that's happening with Jupiter, Pluto and Mars, We really do need to keep talking to aid our understanding of one another and to forge alliances. On a personal level, this is a time to follow our curiosity. We need to be inquisitive, open to learning more about ourselves and life. Here on the Earth School, we are students. So whilst Mars, Jupiter and Pluto wrestle with one another, the cool breeze of the Sun in Gemini asks that we remain open-minded and curious about our differences instead of being afraid or judging one another. This concludes my reading for May 2023. If you would like to hear more from me and support this channel, I do have a Patreon. I will put the link below. Please subscribe here and click that notification bell if you so wish, because it does help the algorithm as always. I do hope you found this reading helpful, and I wish you many blessings on your path.